A few years back, I was actually the designer on these parts, so I know them firsthand and why we did them. So we're going to go ahead and get started with more or less the flashy stuff. So the flashy stuff, one of the first things I'll present to you guys is ECX 331000, and this is the front shock tower in aluminum. It's going to look awesome. It's going to provide you the same, again, mounting points, the same adjustability for your front camber. These really were kind of designed for when we used to have the boost, because again the boost was a little buggy, so the shock tower was actually exposed, both front and rear. So we really designed these for those, but we've actually been selling these really well for all the entire vehicles. So again, this is more of just a flashy item, but a really cool item to have. It really stands out when you take the body off. It's such a big portion of the front and rear suspension. And it comes again with all your hardware that you need to mount this. Moving on is the actual rear shock tower. This is ECX 331001, and this comes in two pieces. We did it in two pieces just because it's a lot easier to manufacture and cheaper to manufacture that way. But the bottom plate that actually holds your rear camber links bolts to the shock tower. Then you can install that whole assembly using the same exact screws. This does come with the hardware needed in order to install the bottom plate to the actual shock tower. So again, you do get, I would say you get a little bit of performance gain, really, because your shock tower just isn't going to flex through the travel. But other than that, it's going to be really minor. These are kind of just more for show, more the aesthetics than anything else. So those two parts are strictly aesthetics. Now we're going to move on to the parts that add durability. Now, one of the things that I will say when you add durability to the vehicle is if you make something stronger, it's always going to make something weaker, right? This is why, we don't do, for example, aluminum suspension arms. Aluminum, sure, doesn't necessarily break, but it does bend. And it just puts the stress points on something else. This could be your hinge pin, this could be your toe block, whatever it may be. So we design the parts that we feel are necessary in order to make the car more durable. So starting off with more durable, one of the top things, if you're going for the durability aspect, is ECX 334002. And these are the steering blocks. Now, the big weak point on these steering blocks, and it also gives a little bit of performance gain, is the actual arm that your steering link's attached to. These will actually flex, and under super high impact, these will actually end up snapping off. You guys will see this on most vehicles. It's a natural weak point since there's so much leverage on it. Now the ECX stuff, we do have plastic links that do flex quite well, so you don't really see that issue, but it is a contributing factor to the actual play. So this is one of the top things that I would recommend if you're trying to go on the durability route. Next, to add to that, you can get your rear hubs. This is ECX 334000. These rear hubs, again, just add the durability. The hinge point, from the bottom of the hinge pin to the top of the camber block is pretty significant. So these are not only going to look awesome, they're going to hold, again, all your bearings that come with the hardware necessary, but these are going to add a lot of durability. What these primarily do is whenever you have those side impacts on either tire, anything that you land on the corner tire, this is where your rear hub is going to kick in. Moving right along to the caster block. These caster blocks, again, all durability, right? So when you have your hinge pin, now it comes with your hardware in order to mount your, again, this works with the plastic or aluminum spindle, but this is going to add just, again, durability. Normally on caster blocks, what you see is these flexing points here start tweaking, and you can kind of either rip the hinge pin out, or out of here, it'll actually pull the actual spindle out of it. This isn't a natural problem, of course. For those of you who have run the ECX line, know that they're bulletproof. But again, these are just adding flex points. So it's a really great thing if you want to add durability. Now this kind of is a hybrid of kind of durability, but also kind of one of those things that's more for aesthetics, are your wheel hexes. They look awesome, especially when your truck's sitting there without the wheels off and stuff. But really, they do add a sense of durability to where you're not going to strip them. Being aluminum, if it is kind of normal sometimes, if your wheel kind of comes loose for whatever reason, you can tighten it all the way, the hex will actually start spinning and rounding itself off inside the plastic wheel. And next thing you know, you have pretty much a circle on a circle. You won't get any type of drive to that side of that tire, which obviously won't let you run. So these will prevent that from happening. So great little feature. They look awesome. Add durability, add reliability. That's ECX 332001. So check that out. And again, all these hop-ups, guys, work on all the ECX two-wheel drive vehicles, the 10-scale two-wheel drive vehicles. So now we're going to get down to the good stuff. This is the stuff that I get excited about because it actually adds a high level of performance gain to your vehicle. So we're going to start off with the least amount. Now the shocks on these things are great. We do offer aluminum shock sets. These already come pre-built, pre-oiled for you. I have the fronts here and I have the rears. Again, the front fit all. There is 2 separate sets of shocks. The Circuit, the Ruckus, and the Torment take 1 shock in the front. Same vehicles take 1 shock in the rear. The Boost actually takes as its own individual shorter shocks that we do sell for the Boost if you guys are looking to hop that up. Now, the cool thing about these, one thing is they're machined aluminum, right? So with plastic, sometimes you get defects, very microscopic waves that when the shock piston is traveling up the actual bore, you're going to get some tight spots. Where when they're machined, they're pretty much machined to where you're going to get a smooth stroke the entire way. One of the cool things you can do with these shocks, ECX takes clips to adjust the spring collets, which are kind of limited to what you can do. These are threaded, so you can just turn the shock collar and it'll tighten or loosen the tension on your spring, which will either raise or lower your ride height. Normally you want to run your arms, suspension arms, or another good reference point is your actual axles. You want to run your axles level to whatever the surface that it's on. So that's going to kind of, again, provide, these makes it a lot easier to achieve that, a lot smoother performing shock. So this is something that adds a lot of performance, also looks great, but majority performance. One of the coolest things that you can do is also a servo arm, which you have these in 23, 24, and 25 spline. Whether you're running a Spectrum or any other type of manufacturer for your servo, this adds a lot of durability. Where this adds strength is actually in the spline. So this not being plastic, if you're running a metal gear servo, it is common for a lot of vehicles for the spline in the servo horn to actually strip. This being aluminum on the metal gear, it's very, very unlikely to happen as long as this is securely snugged onto your servo. Great option, and a very inexpensive option as well. So this is great. Again, we have 2 more to go here. This is, if you guys want to increase the performance on your vehicle, this is absolutely the #1 seller. And this is new, which is why we're doing this video. This is the steering and Servo Saver. It's ECX 331008. Again, it's ECX 331008. Now, what this does, it's going to get rid of a lot of this play. So the design here, essentially what it is, imagine a shock clip. It has 2, you have your bottom bell crank and your upper bell crank that goes to your servo. And there's just a C-clip, a plastic C-clip with a little metal spring around it that keeps everything nice and snug. Now, what happens is the plastic and everything does have a little bit of, it gets tighter as it opens up, just naturally, but the initial, it's very loose, which is why you get this. Now, what this system does, it gets rid of that entire system and it installs a more traditional Servo Saver with a spring and a nut that you can tighten or loosen for your preference. This is similar to what we use on 8-scale, 10-scale racing vehicles. So again, this is proven, and all this is essentially your top bell crank and the bell crank that goes to your steering link. There's a V-cut in it. Now that V-cut, you need a Servo Saver to loosen up and come back down, and that's where the spring comes in because it'll keep it locked in as much as they need. You tighten the spring, it's going to pretty much lock out the Servo Saver and get direct drive. If you loosen it, it's going to loosen it up more, which is a little bit safer sometimes, especially for the kids, especially if you're bashing. But this is the absolute #1 hop-up that I could recommend on the performance side. This thing, again, helps tremendously. For example, if you go ahead and throw in a really high-performance Spectrum servo in this, yes, you're going to get quicker response time, but the play that comes in its stock, you won't really get to use that entire performance. You put a high-end servo on it with this system on there, it changes the entire characteristics of your truck. So check this out. Again, it's ECX 331008. Last but not least, this is great, and again, that adds to durability. This is the #1 thing for durability, and this is something that was just recently released. This is ECX 332005. and this is a anti-slip motor mount. Now, let me kind of explain this and why we designed this. So the transmission case actually is the motor plate. Usually, for example, on a TLR car, you have an aluminum motor plate that bolts onto your plastic transmission case. On the ECX vehicles, the actual motor plate is plastic and it's already molded into the differential case. Now, this isn't necessarily something that fails, but what happens is the screws, when you tighten the motor screws, plastic, again, does have some give and it eventually ends up squishing. And with heat from the motor, it kind of smushes even more, which allows the motor to move, which will then, again, mess up your gear mesh. It could potentially strip out a spur gear. This prevents that from happening. So what you do is you take off the motor screws, the motor can remain in there, you put this in, and then you put the motor screws back in. And this has two teeth on each side that essentially grab onto the plastic. And again, you have a good support system here that's going to not only, now your pressure points are not just in two ends, it's on all three. They're pretty much about, I would say, 50% of the motor now. So the contact batch and the tension on the motor is going to be much better. Running these will pretty much prevent your motor from slipping back or moving back, and it'll keep you from stripping spur gears, especially on those high impacts where you land on the rear bumper and the rear motor takes a lot of abuse. That's usually what shifts the motor. This prevents